Our next speaker is Dan Wolford. Dan is a member of Pax Christi USA and the Phoenix chapter of Pax Christi. Dan and his wife of 42 years, Margaret, became interested in peace issues when during 1968, Dan lost several high school classmates in Vietnam. As residents of Kent, Ohio, they experienced the violence of May 4th, 1970, when 4 were killed at Kent State University. On moving to Phoenix in 1994, they studied theology at the Kino Institute, the Diocese of Phoenix School for Lay Ministers. The rich social justice teachings of the Catholic Church and further study through the just faith process led them to join and help establish Pax Christi here in the Valley. With the rich Catholic traditions and the examples of Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Oscar Romero, and many others have shown that nonviolence is the path to follow toward lasting peace. The Gospels illustrate that the nonviolent Jesus, who confronted the powers, is the example we must follow. Violence begets violence. Peace and nonviolence are the legacy for our future. Dan?
Pax Christi is a movement committed to a world that reflects the peace of Christ, firmly believes that torture violates the basic human right and dignity at the core of the Catholic faith and international law, and can never be considered morally acceptable under any circumstances. As U.S. Catholics, we were deeply troubled by the Bush administration's effort to circumvent national and international laws prohibiting the use of torture under the auspices of national security. In particular, evidence of the Bush administration implementing rendition outsourcing, implementing policies of torture outside national territory and beyond the authority of national intelligence services. This is in clear violation of international law and violates the United Nations Convention Against Torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, which provides that no one may be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degraded treatment or punishment, even under exceptional circumstances. The convention reaffirmed that, I quote, "No state party shall expel, return, or extradite a person to another state where there is substantial grounds for believing that he would be in danger of being tortured." There is no room to debate on where the social justice teachings of the Catholic Church lie on the issues of torture. In the Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church, quote, "International judicial instruments concerning human rights correctly indicate a prohibition against torture as a principle which cannot be contravened under any circumstances." In all cases, even those that involve the most serious crimes and offenses, the Catholic Church calls governments to strictly observe the regulations against the use of torture in carrying out investigations. The McCain bill, passed by Congress and signed into law by President Bush, prohibited cruel and degrading treatment. Unfortunately, the bill provided legal defenses that would shield those who command or commit torture. President Bush also signed the bill with reservations, essentially inserting a loophole to authorize torture under the guise of national security. Pax Christi calls upon Congress to establish an independent commission to publicly investigate reports of abuse in U.S. centers around the world and to pass legislations upholding U.S. and international law. We must hold all parties, even those in the highest offices, accountable on the issue of torture, whether it is former President Bush, members of his administration, or members of insurgencies whose acts of hostage-taking, bombings, and beheadings are equally cruel and barbaric. Pax Christi calls for an end to these acts and practices which always serve as fuel in the spiraling cycle of violence. There can be no compromise on the moral imperative to protect the basic human rights of all people and to observe our church's prohibitions on torture.